Gibraltar's role as a military base has been reduced in a sense, but its strategic value has been enhanced, particularly because of events elsewhere. I mean, Malta is no longer available. I mean, the nearest base that they have apart from the NATO bases in Italy is Cyprus. So I think we have the best ingredient for a continuing relationship with Britain, which is a coincidence of interest in that Britain is interested in Gibraltar and we are interested in British presence because that is what secures our way of life that we have chosen.
Most people have heard of Gibraltar, but because of rhyming names in the Mediterranean, it often gets confused with Malta. But it does spring to mind as being the Rock of Gibraltar. Hardly surprising really, because that's exactly what it is. A sizable chunk of dense limestone attached to the southern end of Spain, but otherwise surrounded by water. In prehistoric times, Europe and Africa were joined together by land. But after the Ice Age, the Atlantic burst through, filling the Mediterranean and gouging out the straits in the process. The rock itself is part of a mountain system of southern Spain, although it differs remarkably from its immediate surroundings. Together with the Atlas Mountains of Morocco, it was one of the Pillars of Hercules, the end of the known world. If you sailed any further, you'd fall off the edge. Gibraltarians speak English and Spanish, but communicate with each other in a peculiar combination of both, known locally as llanito. To achieve this particular dialect, one must possess the remarkable ability of being able to switch from one language to the other, often in mid-sentence and completely unconsciously.
Claro, claro, claro. Esto eran a las 6. No, yo hablé más tarde. Sí, pues nosotros escuchamos boom, boom, you know, the gunfire. Y después we said, what's this? Y ahí nos tomamos la ventana, la tabacalera de Big Beam ese tenían puesto. Uf.
Carbon monoxide, traffic congestion and noise pollution. It's difficult to find a parking space, and a common practice is to double park alongside someone else, leaving your key in the ignition so that they can move your car out of the way if need be. Public transport is available in the form of a Gibraltar bus service. Scaling things down to suit a small population presumably gave birth to the idea of a fleet of matchbox toys to serve the outlying districts of Gibraltar. Certainly there are no double-deckers on any of these routes. However, with a flat rate fare of just 20 pence per journey, no one's complaining, and maybe the bone-shaking ride has a certain novelty value about it. Within such a close-knit community, it's perhaps only natural to wait a few extra moments to enable a friend to catch the bus. But if such generous consideration is made too frequently, it does become difficult to make much headway with the journey itself. International financial institutions are starting to open offices on the Rock.
It has a lot of benefits over other areas. Obviously, locality within Europe is very important. The advantages of picking a place like Gibraltar for the non-resident who wishes to form the exempt tax company is that he can have that company managed and controlled from Gibraltar, with all necessary meetings being held here. If the individual that controls this company is also a non-resident of Gibraltar, therefore he lives in Spain or he lives in England and flies over to do his business, then he is not liable to any tax whatsoever on his salary, fees, dividends or whatever that are paid by that company.
Over the heads of the bustling Main Street crowd lies another world, a world of architectural contrast reflecting a colonial past. Although located at the foot of the Rock, the township of Gibraltar is built on a slope. Much of it is accessible only by alleyways, ramps or flights of steps. It's ideal for the keep fit enthusiast and a popular haunt for the pigeon, but the pathways have been sadly neglected over the years, and most of them are in need of a good scrubbing brush. External appearances don't seem to be particularly important out here, and the Gibraltarian is clearly not much of a do-it-yourself enthusiast when it comes to giving the house a coat of paint. Such indifference to the environment has produced a mishmash of interesting facades which are marred by unsightly destruction, dilapidation and ruin. It's a long haul to the summit, and even if baby enjoys the ride, it's no joke making the ascent in the heat of the day. Although the passages might be fun for hide and seek, it's a blessed relief when you finally make it to the top. But Gibraltar also possesses its share of the more grandiose dwelling places. There are good examples of well-preserved colonial architecture, and if you're prepared to invest a bit of time in looking around, you can stumble upon a whole host of unusual buildings from a bygone era. Some are well cared for, others have been left to rot and decay, and still more lie derelict for years, waiting plans for restoration or redevelopment. Roof gardens in Gibraltar tend to be dominated by the ever-essential television aerials, and it seems that some people even have their television set installed out on the terrace. There's a maze of back alleys to explore, no doubt each one of them with its own story to tell. But Gibraltar is British and doesn't want you to forget the fact. Gentle reminders about sovereignty are found artistically expressed on its walls. Whether by management or coincidence, even the drain covers resemble the Union Jack. It's a common mistake to assume that the people of Gibraltar are of Spanish origin. In fact, many families can be traced back to Malta, Portugal, Britain and Genoa. A lot of surnames are distinctly Italian, and even the main square is called the Piazza rather than the Plaza.
A lot of people make the mistake that because the Gibraltarian is basically a Mediterranean type of person, not Spanish, but Mediterranean type of person, that means that we must automatically be closer to the Spanish way of thinking than the British one. Well, it isn't so, because we can enjoy ourselves. For example, we can enjoy the music, the food, the wine and all this of Spain, or any other Mediterranean country for that matter, not just Spain. But when it comes down to important issues, serious matters like politics and the way we think on important things, then we're much more British than Spanish. I mean, I notice that myself when I go to Spain, as long as it's all flamenco and dancing and singing, I'm fine. I can be one of them, I can join in. But when it comes down to discussing issues of importance, be it politics, religion, women's emancipation, anything like that, I'm definitely not the same as the other Spaniards. I mean, I'm not Spanish. You can tell the way that I speak and the way that I think, much more British in that way. So that's why we feel we want to carry on our links with Britain. We want to be British. We want to carry on being British.
In the 8th century, Arabic Moors sailed across the straits led by Commander Tariq ibn Zayed. The rock provided a foothold for a holy war that led to the domination of Spain and an Arab occupation lasting 7 centuries. Spanish Christian armies attempted to capture the rock and partially succeeded in the 14th century, but it wasn't until the middle of the 15th century that they were able to weaken the Arabic hold on Spain sufficiently to drive the Muslim armies back to North Africa. Under Spanish possession, the rock was then fortified as a small garrison town. Merchants from Genoa used it as a stopping point on their trading routes around the Mediterranean. At the beginning of the 18th century, Great Britain was concerned about the balance of power in Europe, and having already fought numerous wars with the Spanish, began actively seeking a foothold in Spain as part of a plan to install its choice of king onto the Spanish throne. Sir George Rooke, commanding an Anglo-Dutch fleet, first tried to take the island of Minorca, but was unsuccessful. On his return journey back through the straits, and perhaps out of frustration, he used his 50 or so ships to attack and capture Gibraltar. It was a complete walkover. The Spanish garrison on the rock was at that time extremely undermanned, and there was no choice but to surrender. Initially, there were fears that Spain would try to retake Gibraltar, but instead, 10 years later, in the interests of peace, it was formally given to Britain by Spain. However, problems didn't stop there. British possession of the rock helped to keep the Spanish and French apart at critical moments during naval campaigns, and Englishmen began to delight in Gibraltar as being a plaguey Protestant thorn in the side of Catholic Spain. It wasn't long before Spanish armies carried out sieges on Gibraltar by cutting off supplies and repeatedly bombarding the rock. The inhabitants retaliated, and despite constant famine and sickness, displayed remarkable resilience. Nelson's famous victory at Trafalgar, a few miles outside the Straits, effectively removed the threat of any further siege by the Spanish and brought about a century of peace to Gibraltar. The decision was made to develop the dockyard using a workforce of convicts from all over the British Empire, and the opening of the Suez Canal led to an increase in ship bunkering and reprovisioning at the port. Several thousand workers crossed into Gibraltar from Spain each day, increasing the interdependence between the rock and its neighbouring area. Intermarriage between Gibraltarians and Spaniards became a common occurrence, and in the home the Spanish language began to be more used than English. Throughout both world wars, because of its geographical position at the mouth of the Mediterranean, Gibraltar played important military roles. In the Second World War, virtually the entire civilian population was evacuated, and the rock proved extremely useful in the Allied invasion of North Africa and in sustaining convoys to Malta. And of major benefit was the construction of the present-day airport. Since that time, the most significant developments in Gibraltar have been political and constitutional advances towards internal self-government, whilst Spain has made various noises about wanting the place back. Until recently, the border into Spain was closed for 13 years. Thousands of Spaniards who had previously held jobs in Gibraltar were no longer able to commute back and forth. That situation led to an influx of Moroccans from across the Straits to help fill the vacant jobs.
The first time when they come here, they come for a contract, to help Gibraltarians in anything they want. In this, they gave them this residence, it's called casemates. And in here they live, the most of Moroccan people. Because in Morocco they don't get good money. In this they come to work here, for get better money. The most of us, they find a job at the construction building, some day at the hotels, waiters, in kitchen, some others at the bars. That's it. We don't work here in Gibraltar, secretary or things like that. Maybe the most of us just, they have, the hard job who the Gibraltarian can do, you know what I mean? They treat us good, we treat them good, no? They are friendly to us and we to them. We love us and we love them. No? They love us and we love them.
The call to prayer takes place 5 times a day, beginning at sunrise and ending at sunset. Islam was the first religion to have been established on the rock, and today's workforce of Moroccans helps keep the tradition alive. In fact, Gibraltar is something of a melting pot of religions. British rule established a Protestant stronghold which actively discouraged Catholicism. Nowadays, though, every denomination is represented in some way, shape or form. And on certain occasions there's another Holy Trinity that can be seen and heard in the main square.
We are not directed by any human being. No estamos dirigida por ningún ser humano. We have Jesus Christ as the rock of the church. Solamente tenemos a Cristo como la roca de la iglesia. We of Christ and Christ of God. Nosotros de Cristo y Cristo de Dios. Because we are the body of Christ. Porque nosotros somos el cuerpo
Gibraltar also has a large Jewish community. On Saturday mornings, the whole place takes on an air of the Old Testament, whilst the remaining Gentiles do their weekend shopping. It's a blend of different faiths on the rock in which Jews, Muslims, Christians and Hindus live alongside each other in peaceful harmony. Such unique kinship led to the Catholic Community Centre being built by a Jewish construction company using a Muslim workforce on overtime to get the job finished in time for Christmas. The gentle aroma of spices wafting out of a grotty back alley is sufficiently enticing to lure people inside. Here there's a hoard of ingredients for Indian delicacies to satisfy every palate and perhaps burn the roof off your mouth. In the midst of it all, the local Hindu priest. A lot of shops in Gibraltar are run by Indians.
We have got, you see, our Hindu Merchant Association. Hindu Merchant Association from long time established here, which is registered here in Gibraltar. But here they are all merchants. Not only here, but in Tangier and all around you'll find merchants, they give whole attention to their business. Money, to make money. They don't go into politics or anything. They only want making money, happy in their money to make money. We stick to that, though religions, rights and everything, spiritualism, we stick to that. We don't forget. You understand?
As most of the land on the rock belongs to the Ministry of Defence, major housing developments are few and far between. There's a big housing shortage in Gibraltar, and newly married couples often end up living with their in-laws. There's not much property for sale in Gibraltar, and what little there is extremely overpriced because of the demand outweighing the supply. Even finding somewhere to rent in Gibraltar is a long-winded process that can take months. Then, with a bit of smooth sales talk, you can say goodbye to the best part of a weekly wage packet just for something very average.
Property is very expensive in Gibraltar. The rates are quite high. Maintenance you have to put aside, and so obviously one would have to get quite a substantial rent to cover this. So obviously this is why we've got to charge what we're charging at the moment for a furnished apartment, to cover overheads, plus make it worthwhile for the landlord to have done so at the end of the day. At the moment I don't foresee property coming down. We don't keep waiting lists. We're completely chock-a-block at the moment, and only had we more private accommodation in our books, we would be able to help out interested parties and tenants.
The majority of people who visit Gibraltar for a holiday come from Great Britain. There's no language barrier, and the currency is pounds and pence. Tourism is regarded as an integral part of the Gibraltar economy, but it's difficult to attract the long-stay tourist when everything is so much cheaper across the border in Spain.
Perhaps the question of prices does come into it, but you have to remember that Gibraltar is a completely different situation to anything that surrounds us. The standard of living of Gibraltar, the system of Gibraltar is equal to that of the United Kingdom, so consequently prices compare perhaps more with the United Kingdom that they would do with the surrounding area. Gibraltar offers a different sort of holiday. We are not, I don't think, we are not in the market of sun, sea or whatever. We are more perhaps of the specialized holiday where people can come and take advantage of what we have to offer.
Above all, there's a lot to be seen, and because of the rock's small area of just 2¼ square miles, everything is easily accessible. And yet, in spite of plans to enhance and develop its potential, Gibraltar still needs to clean up its act. It's strewn with litter from one end to the other, and although there's the occasional public outcry, not much is ever done to tidy the place up. It requires careful navigational skills to avoid the dollops of dog's muck spread so liberally throughout the town. It's not just geographical when people refer to the place as being the tip of Europe. It's interesting to go bathing with a car chassis to keep you company. Gibraltar is full of quaint customs to ensure that everybody has a memorable holiday. Every once in a while, somebody organises a clean-up campaign, but it doesn't take long for the situation to revert back to its previous state. Although the locals may have learnt to live with it, the tourists certainly notice it.
No, well, it looked a little bit grotty as we sort of went in, you know, but otherwise it was very nice. No, cleaned up a bit, the streets perhaps.
Stinks. For a short stay, yes, I wouldn't recommend a long stay here.
Not actually stay here.
Not to stay here.
No, it's worth it for the day.
I think maybe a day or two at the most.
I think if there's a clean-up campaign, it would make a hell of a difference.
Just needs cleaning up a bit.
Too many cars.
It's a bit shabby. Could use some cleaning up. But on the whole, I love the place.
No, it's okay.
It's nice, but I'm glad to get back into Spain.
Gibraltar has been associated with maritime activity of one sort or another since time immemorial. The dockyards boast 3 dry docks as well as extensive berthage and workshops. However, as with many of Britain's military establishments in recent years, it became the subject of cuts in expenditure, and the decision was made to close it down. Ironically, the Falklands War broke out shortly after that time, and the dockyards were able to prove their value in the rapid conversion of merchant ships to troop-carrying vessels, which formed part of Britain's task force. More recently, the main part of the dockyard has been handed over by the Ministry of Defence and reopened as a commercial ship repair yard. Quite a bold undertaking at a time when similar operations are in a state of recession. But there are enough ships passing through the area to keep the yard alive, and of course the Royal Navy is forever present in Gibraltar.
Gibraltar is still extremely important. We, as you know, are staunch members of the North Atlantic Alliance, and any war that we take part in, we envisage taking part as part of this alliance. Now, early in any war between NATO and the Warsaw Pact, vast quantities of reinforcements would have to come across the Atlantic, much of it destined for the southern region of NATO, Greece and Turkey, and all this has to come by sea through the Straits of Gibraltar. Now, this is an obvious target for any enemy to intercept it as it comes through this narrow funnel. And our main job in war would be to keep the Straits of Gibraltar open to reinforcement shipping. Now, we are ideally placed to exercise that here. We've got our command post for our Admiral, who is a NATO commander. We have an airfield. We have a naval support facility where we can control the war in the Straits of Gibraltar. We can provide support, logistic support, fuel, ammunition to the units taking part, and of course the airfield is equally important for air forces taking part. So it is extremely strategically important still, as it always has been.
Gibraltar has to be one of the few places outside England where English pubs actually look like English pubs. As both the first and last port of call from home, it's a place where the British Navy can really go to town.
It's the British sailors that cause the most trouble, I must say. And they like to break toilets and wear toilet seats and collect toilet chains. It's all to do with toilets where you can't see what they're doing. but they do a lot of damage in Gibraltar when they come, the British fleet, not the others. And the effect it has, it does clear the streets of the local population. Usually there are quiet bars at the back where the expatriates tend to drink, and they just let the Navy get on with the main street. There's a lot of British run the bars here. They've had pubs in England, and they're trying to recreate Britain back in Gibraltar.
Gibraltar seemingly came one step closer to an open border situation when Britain recently removed its military guard from the frontier. It caused quite a stir amongst Gibraltarians who fear losing their individuality to Spain.
Frontier guard, I think, was something symbolic. And mind you, I'll tell you something, we go to Spain very little, but when we are driving back and we see the rock there looming ahead of you,
oh, you feel great.
You feel great. Mind you, we still have many friends in Spain, but we don't trust whatever government may be in power at the other end. They are after Gibraltar. They say they will respect our wishes. We doubt it.
They made us feel this animosity against them. And it's not only us. Our children have grown up in that atmosphere as well.
We're given solid information here by our politicians. They try to sidestep the issue. Not to worry, not to fear, everything is all right. And then we get to know things by the Spanish television.
People are very confused here about the issue. Some people could say that we're staying behind the times. But this is our homeland, and everything we say comes to the same thing. We don't want to be driven away from our hometown, from our motherland. This is for us, where we were born. It's simple.
According to the original agreement made with Spain 2 centuries ago, Gibraltar is British for as long as the British want to hang on to it. Gibraltarians make no secret of the fact that as far as they're concerned, they want to remain British forever. A referendum held in 1967 brought the message home when the colony voted overwhelmingly in favour of retaining British sovereignty. The sun never used to set on what was once the British Empire. It still manages to shine down on the few remaining outposts as Gibraltar prepares to meet the challenges that lie ahead.
The Gibraltarian has got to stop seeing himself as the pig in the middle between a Britain and Spain that have historically been antagonistic, and begin to fit himself into a new world which is a European world, a European common market in which Britain and Spain are today both members, and in which Britain and Spain are able to cooperate on everything except the subject of Gibraltar. I, as a Gibraltarian, would say that if there were to be one subject only upon which Britain and Spain should cooperate, it ought to be Gibraltar.
So there you have it. Almost a complete accident of history that its present population is there at all. And although it's no longer fashionable to hold on to colonies, Gibraltar is one place in which the democratically expressed will of its people is still seen to prevail.